What's up, everybody? Welcome back to For All Nerd Kind. I'm your host, Cousin Ryan, and with me always is my great friend, the one and only Josh. What's
up,
going
buddy?
on? How's it going, man?
Oh, it's going.
It's been a while since we've done one of these. I know it's been a few weeks since we've got to jump on together and record, and summer's over and we're gonna start doing stuff again, and I'm really excited to jump into it. We got a good episode for everybody today, but how's it going? Like, how have you been? I know it's been a minute.
Dude, summer is over, sadly. It's getting so cold at night. Well, it's getting decently cold. I mean, I like it, but it's still cold. Finally wearing sweaters.
Must be nice.
Yeah, summer was cool. I'm excited to do more of this, but just so everybody's aware, like, nerd news is slow right now. It's so slow. It's ridiculous how slow it is because of the strikes. Nobody can get interviewed. Nobody can talk about anything. Obviously, nobody's writing anything. There's no news. Can't cast anybody. I mean, it's rough right now.
It is, and it's so there's very limited things that we can talk about because of the strike. With SAG and AFTA and all that stuff. So there's very limited that we can actually do. And so, we've dug back into the vault and are going old school with things. We did Mortal Kombat recently. We did the Guardians of the Galaxy, just the last episode with Moose. We have a new episode. This episode today is going back into the 90s, and we'll talk about it here in a second. So we don't have a whole lot of nerd news to share with everybody. And we just want to get out here and start talking about the things that we are nerdy about. So that's why we wanted to come on and do this. No matter what it is, we're going to talk nerdy. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and just go straight into the topic we want to talk about today. And it is near and dear to my heart because something I grew up on, something I have loved since a child. But we're going to talk about the 90s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fandom. We're going to talk about all that stuff tonight. And I'm really excited because I loved it. I loved all of it. And I know you and I just recently watched all three of those 90 movies again. And so we'll talk about this. I think, we'll rank them, and I think everyone's going to have the same probably rank that we all have. But let's just jump into it right away. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, first movie came out in, 1991, I believe was the first movie that came out.
Mm-hmm.
And it set the stage to what the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was, in my opinion. I mean, the comic books were already out. The graphic novels were already a thing. Video games followed suit. But that first movie, what was your impressions of that movie? Because that was something brand new for us, who we were, 5 years old, give or take, when this movie came out. So we were young and impressionable. So what were your thoughts on this first movie that when you saw it?
Oh man, first movie was amazing. The first movie, like, hadn't had costumes like that in movies that actually pulled it off. I mean, what it took, I read somewhere it took 3 people to work each suit. So somebody to move it, somebody to move the facial expressions, and then somebody to talk. Like, it's crazy. It's cool. I don't know. Like, it was dark. It was darker, right? Like, a lot of it was at nighttime, obviously, but like no bright colors, just dull kind of. I don't know. It was perfect. It was a perfect 90s movie. Just enough cheese, for those who like cheesy, but it wasn't overly cheesy. Had some good moments. Like, fight scenes were great. Like, for what you can do in a costume like that and pull off fight scenes, that's pretty cool. But like we were saying earlier, like I was saying earlier, is that this was the best. This is hands down number one. We'll get into the other two, but like those 90s movies, I mean, we just talked about Mortal Kombat, how the first one, fire, just amazing. And then the second one, awful. Like, I tried watching it the other day and I got 2 minutes in. I was like, nah, I'm not. I can't. I won't. I won't. And then, yeah. But so, first Ninja Turtles, great. Voice acting, great. Casey Jones, awesome. April was cool. Splinter was done right. And then, yeah, I mean, it hit everything. Pizza, Ninja, everything. It was cool. Loved
And
it.
especially for those of us who were fans of the cartoon series that was going on around the same time, it really hit those things. And what's funny is watching this movie, for those of you who have seen it and didn't realize or haven't seen it, go back and watch it, because there's a lot of star-studded casts unknown at the time who were in this film. I mean, you look at Sam Rockwell was one of the lead one of the lead guys of the Foot Clan, and he was there, and it was a young Sam Rockwell who went on to become Justin Hammer in the MCU, and he was incredible in it. He was amazing, for what he was. Skeet Ulrich was in the movie. He had a small part in the movie. I know it took me a second when I had to go back and watch it again, but he has a small part in that movie. You're like, that's freaking Skeet Ulrich. That blows my mind, from Scream.
Huh. Okay.
Corey Feldman was a voice of one of the Ninja Turtles, and we'll go into it more, but he didn't come for 2. He came back for 3, but it was huge. And I was a big fan, and I was sad to say, but the first movie, the TMNT one, Judith Hoag was by far my favorite April O'Neil they could have cast for that role. I think she was fantastic for what it was. And she didn't come back, obviously, for the next 2 movies, which was really unfortunate. There was some disagreements with them, and we'll go into those later. But that first movie had such a great star-studded cast inside the suits and outside the suits, because no one in the suits were their own voice. It was all voiced by someone else. It was all voiceovers for those turtles, and for Splinter. And so, but like you said, it was the dark, it was gritty, it was a 90s ninja movie that hit everything that you could have wanted for a nerd, in my opinion.
100%. I had all the toys. I mean, there was a couple Sega games. Oh, I think it was just one Sega game. Where was it? I know there was a Nintendo one, and then I believe there was a Sega one that's still pretty popular today, I think.
So there was 2 big games at the time. There was the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was a side-scrolling hack and slash. That was probably one of the hardest games I've ever played on a Nintendo. For those of you who've never played it, you were you had 4 lives basically, which is all 4 of the turtles. Side scroller pizzas was your health, to where you would eat a whole pizza or a piece of pizza to get your health back. There was the Foot Clan. The water level was probably one of the hardest levels in that entire game, when you had to defuse all the bombs. And then you went on to drive around into the party van that they didn't bring into the movie. They kind of like alluded to it a little bit in the movie, but not so much. And then the second game that was around the same time was Teenage Mutant Turtles, Turtles in Time, which is probably the game you're thinking of, and hands down one of the best games that they've ever made, in my opinion, for the Ninja Turtles. It had characters that weren't in the movie. It had characters that everyone wanted. Bebop and Rocksteady were, 2 characters that everyone loved from the comics, the cartoon series, whatever. But if it wasn't for this original Teenage Mutant Turtles movie, I don't think we would have the franchise that we have today that is still existing.
Yeah, I mean, they just Seth Rogen just came out with his version. Before that, there was a failed CGI one, which I didn't mind at all. And then before that, there was, what else was it? What was before that?
There's a few cartoons before that. They're like the younger cartoon ones, because you had the one with Megan Fox, and
yeah, there you go.
That was the CGI, or not really CGI. That was another live action one they did. They had the other cartoon ones, and they weren't, they didn't hold up, in my opinion, to what the original movie was. But then again, I'm slightly biased, I think, to it, because I was influenced by the cartoon.
Well, I mean, not to go too far into it, but the one with Megan Fox, I mean, they were huge. They were Hulk size. Like, kind of defeats the purpose of having ninja skills and stealth when you're fucking 8 feet tall and 400 pounds, know, and they're moving around shipping containers. It was cool. It was entertaining. I felt like they got the characters down pretty good for like a more modern take, but the fact they were so huge. Anyways, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the first 3. First one was it just hit everything.
It had the humor. It had the humor. It had the backstory. It had their origin story to a point. And I think it hit all the things that we wanted. And if it was just that, it by itself, it's a great standalone movie. If there was no other sequels to it, I think it would have been a great standalone movie. It's rewatchable and it holds up.
It does. The other two, unfortunately, not.
Not so much. And which brings me into, we'll go to the next one. Teenage Mutant Turtles, Secret of the Ooze. This is where you and I will differentiate on this, because this, for me, is still one of my... it's not as good as the first one, but it's better than the third one, and it's still up there for me. It's watchable. I can watch it over and over again. They changed a lot, though, when it came to this Turtles. And I get it now. After watching it again recently, it did change quite a bit. April O'Neil, Paige Turco came in to play the new April O'Neil. She was good, but she wasn't Judith, which is what I loved. And then they changed the character. They changed the animatronics for this movie for the Turtles. Like, they finally gave them facial expressions, more controlled facial expressions than they did in the first one. The Turtles looked a little different. Corey Feldman wasn't there, obviously, to voice the role he voiced. And they brought in new people, but everything else was somewhat the same. But it was kind of a cash grab, I feel like, at the same time, too.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, sequels in the 90s didn't work. This one was one of the big ones that it was popular. I remember I loved it as a kid. I did. As a kid, it was great. And then I watched it as a 36-year-old, and I'm like, I like this. I love it. I mean, they were dancing at the end with Vanilla Ice, who...
Go Ninja, go Ninja.
Yeah, he conveniently had a song picked out and a dance. I mean, it's just a movie, but whatever. And then, you got Toka and Reza, and why? You had Rocksteady Bebop right there, and you decided to create two new characters that were idiots.
A snapping turtle and a wolf. Yeah.
Yeah, like, everybody wanted... Well, I mean, at the time, I didn't give a shit, but if I were to watch the movie again, where's Rocksteady and Bebop?
Right.
And then the 2 minutes of Super Shredder, just terrible. And I don't know. It wasn't as bad as the third one. It wasn't as good as the first one. Rewatchability nowadays is... I wouldn't do it again. I tried. I did. And it was just so terrible. The fight scenes weren't there. Like, as there became more and more movies, the fight scenes kind of went away. Like, just turned into just a big, as many people move as you can to make it look like you're fighting. No choreography to any of it. And it was...
Well, and so to go back to on that point, from what I understood from it, the studio didn't want the second movie to be as violent as the first one, because they viewed the first one a little more violent than what they were used to with the Ninja Turtles, with the fighting and the weapons, stuff like that. Granted, because if you looked at the second one, they didn't use their weapons as much.
No.
And there wasn't a whole lot there's a lot more of a dialogue and stuff like that. But I think the only two saving graces that I can say that came from that movie for me is Ernie Reyes Jr. got his shot. So he was one of the choreographed Ninja Turtles from the first movie. He did some of the fight scenes as a turtle and as a stand-in, and they gave him a shot and gave him a role as the pizza delivery boy in this movie. And it's Kino. And what's funny to me is, what I love is, I didn't know him from this movie particularly. Like, now that I go back and watch it, I'm like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But Ernie Reyes Jr. to me will always be Surf Ninjas with Rob Schneider. At some point, we're going to talk about that movie. We're going to have an episode about that movie, because that movie is so fucking corny and cheesy, but it's so great at the same time. It makes me so happy. And a dirty blonde Rob Schneider as a kid was super weird to see. Yeah, and then the kid it was a good movie. But Ernie Reyes Jr., it was great to see him in a role like that. And for those of you who don't know who Super Shredder was Big Sexy Kevin Nash. They brought him in to play Super Shredder. And that's, the huge, big fucking guy. So I agree. They could have done better with the villains. Bebop and Rocksteady would have been great compared to Toka and Razor. A snapping turtle and a wolf, whatever, especially babies who are dumb. And that wasn't what Bebop and Rocksteady were. They were smart, a rhino and a pig. they could have done so much more with it.
Oh yeah,
and the whole Vanilla Ice thing, total cash grab. He was popular at this time in the 90s, so they brought him in. They had a song, and the whole fight scene that they had, dance-off fight scene they had with no weapons, just fighting.
Yeah, I don't know. It steered too far from the first one. As an adult, like I said, as a kid, I didn't care. Content was awesome. Like I'd watch it, I'd rent it, I'd rewind it, play it again, rewind it, play it again. But nowadays, I'm like, you should have stopped at number one if you were going to go down this route. And then it only kept going further and further down.
Because if I remember it, I'm trying to remember, but they kind of, after the first one with this one, they kind of went a little bit further away from the graphic novels and comic books with the storyline. I understand they want to bring in the ooze and what happened and why they were why they became the way they were, but when you venture away from the original content, you start losing people, and I feel like that's what happened.
I agree with that, but it's just something about 90s and even early 2000s, like bigger isn't always better. Like nowadays movies can do that because they understand how to do it, especially if they have a plan. Look at one of the greatest sequels ever, The Dark Knight. Like how do you get bigger from Scarecrow in the first one? Well, it just keeps getting better. You could do that now with movies, but back then I felt like it's still kind of like today. Everybody wants more content. Let's get it out as fast as we can. Just throw everything you want at it. Do what you want to do, because right now people just want to see them on TV.
Well, and I think, and you saying that, it kind of brought back some memories for me. But like, I remember watching, because I watched them again recently, and it had been, I don't know, 10 years, at least a decade since I've seen any of these movies until we started talking about them. And watching the first movie, I was able to quote 75 to 80% of that entire movie. Like before the line of up, I knew what they were going to say. I knew I knew the dialogue from that movie. Watching the second one, not so much. And it made me think that there's a lot more comedy in the first one than there was in the second one. There's a lot more one-liners and zingers that stuck that they didn't have in the follow-up. And I can see why, and this is why it's not as, obviously, in like your opinion and somewhat in mine, it's not as good as the first one. There wasn't as much memorable things in this one than there was the first one.
It's memorable for the wrong reasons. Toka and Reza, I remember that. I remember Vanilla Ice. I remember dancing. Yeah.
I can't remember dialogue though, like I did in the first one.
No, not at all. I mean, yeah, you can quote the first one almost word for word just because it was so good. But
wise man says, and that whole intro, wisdom is divine, but never pay full price for a late pizza. Like I will forever remember that line. I'll remember that quote forever. Mikey and Donatello had some of the greatest one-liners in that movie. That made.
Oh yeah. It's just like you were saying, Pizza Dude's got 30 seconds,
Yep.
And then even something so small as when Leo and Raph are arguing in April's apartment, and they're sitting there eating pork rinds, and pork rind. It's just stupid. But it was so memorable because that was the characters. Like they nailed the characters in the first movie. In the second one, they were the same, but I don't know. It was just something off with the writing, something off. Just if they would have done something like the first one, it could have been so much better. They had so much potential.
They needed that comedy. They needed more of that comedy in this film that they didn't have, and it was really unfortunate. But then we go into the next one. We go into the third movie, and I'm gonna be completely honest. It took me 3 days to finish this movie because it was so freaking bad, just so bad. I was excited when it came out. I was excited because I remember playing the Turtles in Time, and then when this came out, I was like, oh, they're gonna time travel, and I thought, oh, this would be somewhat similar, but it wasn't. It was not even remotely close to that, and it's just dumb.
It was dumb. the turtles look like basketballs. I
Yep.
remember watching it just the other day because I had to force myself through it. It was going to take me like a week, but I sat down and I was like, I need to get this over with. I need to just take it in, be done with it, and it's right. But they looked like basketballs. Their facial expressions were all kinds of coked out. Like I
Mhm.
remember Leo was just fucking scary,
Yeah.
downright scary. Uh, and again, there were really no fight scenes. Like, really wasn't anything. Like, I couldn't remember. I still can't remember if there was like any good fight scenes in that one.
There
There
wasn't.
wasn't.
No.
The only thing that I thought would save that movie was Casey Jones because he wasn't in the second one, which really
Mhm.
bummed me out. And then he comes back for the third one, and I'm like, sweet. And then he's a babysitter for the samurai, and I'm like, oh. And then April cut her hair really short because that was a thing, and it looked awful. I'm really sorry, but her short hair did not work.
No, not even remember. Yeah.
And then it was a terrible, terrible movie. Like, you take the first and second one, looking for, they had a home, got invaded, found a second home, and then they lived in it, and you didn't really see like fighting on the streets, crime fighting on the streets,
Right.
doing their everyday thing of like, you know, cruising the streets, rooftops and stopping crime. Like,
Well,
that was completely gone.
they were the, I guess, what, anamorphic, I guess best way to put it, crime fighters. They were vigilantes,
Yep.
who, and that's kind of what we all knew them as. And this third movie took that completely away, had them travel in time, tried to create a love story with Mikey, um, and it was unnecessary.
Yep. There was nothing redeemable about the movie. I hate to say it, like, because I like the turtles, but fuck, man, the third one was just movies they need to forget and lose and delete. It
Right. And
just
then,
wasn't good.
well, what's funny is like, so there was all that conversation about, in this movie, they wanted to introduce a fifth turtle, which again, I'm glad they didn't do. But then they made the live action TV series where they introduced the female turtle, Venus. I think it was Venus, Deand or whatever. They introduced a new turtle. And it's like, you didn't need that. You don't need to go too far from the original content, and they did that with this movie especially. They really tried to change things up, and it was we wanted Casey Jones to save the movie, but he couldn't save the movie. It was too late.
Yeah, and then they changed Splinter. Well, they changed everybody, but Splinter was just so, he was awful. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the voice actor was awful. The prosthetics, the suit, whatever you want to call it, was terrible. It just, ugh. So I mean, choosing best worst, it's got to go one, two, three.
Yeah, agreed.
Just three. If I could make three like 1,000, that's where it would be. But it's a movie I wish we could forget, and I'm happy we got this out of the way because I will never watch that again.
No, I no, and I like, for me, I want to go back and watch the first one again because I just love the first one. I love the whole idea of the first one. And the second one, is tolerable to me because I like the idea. But that third one, I'll never watch it again unless I have to.
No, it was terrible,
It
but
was,
it it didn't kill any love I have for the turtles. I think for those who don't know, you have to know this, but the creators of Turtles wanted almost like Daredevil. They
mhm.
based it off Daredevil, and for those, like I said, for those who don't know, so Daredevil was, crime fighter at night, taking on crime. Yes, he was a lawyer, had nothing to do with Turtles, but when it comes to who he was fighting, the hand, they Turtles fought the foot, and then you had a blind a blind guy who could fight crime, and you had four Ninja Turtles, Stick and Splinter, basically the same person. And what other similarities were there? There was a couple more things I can't remember, but I just remember the creators loved the idea of Daredevil so much they wanted to make something like that, but they had to go completely outside the box, with Turtles. But there were so many different similarities that they had, but you could tell like this is Daredevil, but it's a different spin on it. I always thought that was pretty damn cool.
Well, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, the two creators of TMNT, it started out as a dark graphic novel, like super dark graphic novel. So for those of you who don't know, go check them out. They weren't as lighthearted and humorous as these movies made them. The originals of it was dark. And it goes back to all these three movies. There's so many things that they missed that they could have included in these movies that they didn't bring in. I mean, I would have loved to have Krang. Would have been fantastic in these movies. Instead of the third movie having villains of Japan, and just so many cool things that could have done. Granted, they did Krang in the cartoon. They brought Krang in and they did that, and it was okay. But to give me a live action Krang and how that could have worked out would have been so amazing compared to what they actually did.
Yeah, they've slowly. I mean, the comics, they're still flowing comics, but like The Last Ronin, I still need to read.
Yep.
But I know everything about it. I just need to read it. Like that's a dark comic. Like that's I'm not gonna spoil it for anybody, but if you haven't heard of it, look up is it The Last Ronin? Yep. Last Ronin. It's about a single turtle who we're not going to spoil who it is. Three brothers are dead, and it's just him. He's haunted kind of by his brothers, and he's trying to take down the killer. And it's once you find out who it is, you're like, should have seen that coming, but didn't, because if you read the comic, which I'm sure goes into so much, like I said, I haven't read it yet, but it's going through a lot of shit.
It's dark. It's super dark.
Crazy dark. And they're making a game out of it, which I can't wait for. People who made God of War making the game, so that's in good hands. I mean, there's been so much Ninja Turtles content over the last 30 years. It's insane. Like,
well, there's rumors out there that there's going to be a TMNT crossover in the comic book world into other properties. And I'm excited to see that. Honestly, like you said, if they would ever do a TMNT crossover with Daredevil, I'd be all for it. All for it.
Well, I've read a few, but like there was a Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers crossover comic.
Yep, I do have some of those as well.
Yeah,
you have some of those.
There's a movie and a comic of Ninja Turtles and Batman, and that was pretty decent. But yeah, I mean, just there's so much content, and Turtles will just always be around, especially after Seth Rogen's version. Went and saw it. We don't have to talk about it, but it wasn't terrible. It was geared towards children, which is great. I mean, the audience today is still the audience 30 years ago, so we kind of got to grow up with the times,
right.
So I accepted it. It's good. They're making spin-off shows. Like it's a real thing now. So it's Turtles back in the spotlight, but it's always been a show, a comic. There's never been a discontinue. Like there's been how many Nickelodeon shows? At least 2, something like that in the last 10 years. And before that, we had the movies. So Turtles isn't going away. New movie. It is what it is. I liked it for a kid's movie. Prefer the first Ninja Turtles. They'll always be absolutely number one. But
and I think that's my problem with the new movies is I'm so biased towards the original Ninja Turtles that was the baseline. And it was a movie I introduced my little brother who, he's 12 years old and he's watched it and he loved the movie. And my parents loved it. My dad loved it. It was when my dad talked about getting a Ninja Turtles tattoo, he wanted to base it off of that movie. That's just how much that movie did for the culture of nerddom and what it expanded into what we have today. The video games, the TV shows, the movies, the memorabilia, the comic books. And so for those of you who haven't seen it, if you're a big TMNT fan now, whether it be the Megan Fox version or the cartoon versions, go back and watch that original 1991 version of that movie of the TMNT, because this is what set the stage for what we have today, and it holds up consistently. Will hold up.
Always will, buddy. So before we wrap it up, which sorry for everybody who wants more and more. We're trying to get you content right now. It's hard,
Yeah.
So we're reviewing stuff, and if we didn't have to shit on the third movie, we probably have a lot more to talk about.
Yes.
That's it. It started with the first one. It ended with the first one. But no, man, I forgot where I was going with that. You're gonna have to edit that out. What was I just about to say? I fucking lost it. I'm gone. I got it. I forgot about it.
We really want to get this content out here for everybody, and we want to put stuff out that is part of the, not only the zeitgeist, but what nerddom is. And we're gonna dig deep until the strike is over. We're gonna dig as deep as we can back into the vault of what started nerddom. We've talked about doing the original Daredevil movie, and we will get to that at some point. We're going to watch that, even though I hate that movie with all of my passion and being. Josh has talked me into watching that. And we want to talk. And so we really just, we want to put this stuff out there. We want to nerd out with everyone as much as we possibly can. And so this is one of the things that I'm super nerdy about, because I love Ninja Turtles. I love it with all my heart and passion. So the first two movies, I can highly recommend. The third movie, you don't have to watch it, because you lose nothing. You lose nothing not watching that movie at all.
Oh, who's your favorite turtle? You gotta ask everybody that question.
My favorite turtle always has been Leo. I've always been a fan of Leonardo. He's the leader and he has the swords, but it's just the fact that he was the rock for his brothers.
Gotta agree. I mean, the animated one, the CGI one from 2011, really harked on that in terms of Splinter sent him away. Find out how to be a leader, how to be a better brother, and he came back and he brought everybody back together, because when he left, the group kind of disbanded. Raph took on being a vigilante. Donnie was being a nerd, and Mikey was he a costume, like birthday party something? They were in bad shape. So when Leo came back, he brought everybody together. And yeah, so Leo's always just been awesome. The only thing that disappoints me is that he has swords, and you never really get to see him use them to probably his expertise, because obviously it's a kid's show, it's Ninja Turtles, you can't exactly have him slicing and dicing ninjas. But
so the fun fact about that is, if for those of you who know the lore of TMNT, there's a reason why each brother has the weapons that they have, why Splinter chose those weapons for them. Roth has his weapons because of how his aggression is. This makes him be on the defensive, so he can't attack. He can't do that. He has to be defensive with what he has. Mikey with the nunchucks, since he's such a space case, the nunchucks make him focus on what he's doing when he's fighting, when he's battling. He has to pay attention to what he's handling. Leo has the swords because, again, as the leader, he has to choose the time to when it's time to kill and when it's not. As the leader, he has to set that. And then Donnie, being the brains that he is, the bow staff that he uses makes him realize that he can use other things besides technology to fight. And it's somewhat of a defensive and offensive situation. So each brother has their weapons because of their skill set and because of what they brought to the table. In the lore itself, and I can't remember if it was in the comic books or in the graphic novel, but even Splinter says that Mikey would have been the leader of the group if he was able to mature and focus, because of just the raw talent Michelangelo has. But because of how Mikey is, being the comic humor, the humor relief of it all, he doesn't have those leadership skills like Leo, but he could. He's just raw talent wise, he could. So it's a fun fact.
I would say in his comic book life, up to today, he's definitely shown
Mhm.
for reasons you and I know, he's definitely shown different sides to him, and you see what kind of person he turns into when he grows up and matures. So no spoilers there. Just go find that. Go find that for yourself.
I
You'll see what I'm talking about.
I highly recommend reading the comics books. I highly, more than anything, recommend The Last Ronin. It's going to blow. If anyone who follows TMNT and doesn't know about The Last Ronin, it's going to blow your mind when you read the storyline of it and what happens. It's kind of wild.
It's crazy.
Super wild.
It's so crazy.
It's
good.
Dude, I had fun. I love talking about Ninja Turtles. I love all of this. And now that we've mentioned Ernie Reyes Jr., I want to get into Surf Ninja at some point. And so we're going to have to go watch that and do a quick little episode about that one, because the amount of star power that's in that movie is freaking mind-blowing.
Dude, it's funny to me that you know that movie, because as a kid growing up, I felt like I had like one of the only copies or whatnot, but it really is a cult classic. Like you mention it, there's always somebody in the room who's like, I fucking know Surf Ninjas, like Quan Su, dude, like oh, it was so cool. And I never pieced together that that's Ernie Reyes Jr. because in Surf Ninjas, he's fucking jacked.
Yeah,
he's huge. He's a monster. And in Ninja Turtles, he's tiny.
Tiny little dude, yeah.
Just a little guy, but for Surf Ninjas, he put in some work. He was jacked. It was awesome.
Well, and then and not to go completely off topic, and we'll talk about it, but like to have the star power of what became Rob Schneider as the best friend, the sidekick, and then Tone Loc as a police officer in that movie. Like the amount of people that are in that movie, that when you watch it, you're just like, oh, like this huge star name was in this movie that ended up not being. It's a cult classic more than anything. That's 100%. All it did. It wasn't a huge blockbuster hit. It was a cult classic. They will get to that, but that's the thing about these 90s movies. There's, like we talked about the first one, Corey Feldman came back for the third movie. They brought him back for the third TMNT movie to do the voiceover, which is cool.
I wishes he didn't.
Yeah, he probably wishes he did. But I mean, he did it so well in the first one. But the names of the people who were in, just like, we mentioned Sam Rockwell and Skeet Ulrich, Corey Feldman, Judith Hogue. There were such big names in that movie, in that first TMNT movie, that I bet some of them were glad that they didn't come back to do it. Elias Casey, didn't come back for the second one, but he came for the third one. So a lot of big names, such great first movie that went on to do what it is, but big names. And so for those of you who haven't seen it, go check it out. Go watch that movie. Just go watch the first one. You don't have to watch the other two. Just highly recommend to watch the first one, and let us know what you think in the comments. Whether it be the airing of this episode or later down the road when you watch it with your kids. If you have kids, watch it with them. It's such a great movie, just in general. Like, I can't get enough of it. I want to go watch it again, dude.
Yeah, it'll definitely live on. Like, that'll be one of the movies on my deathbed kind of thing. Just have a huge marathon of movies that I love, and first one's that'll be on there for sure.
Well, and it's like, what's funny is, we've been invited on to do the trivia show, and I really wanted to throw TMNT, the 90s Turtles, as an option to do it, but then I'm like, I don't want to watch that third movie again, because that movie was just balls, dude. Like, I don't want to watch it again for trivia.
Don't make anybody watch that movie. Just don't.
Well, cool, man. Was there anything else you want to talk about before we call it a night?
No, I guess future stuff that we have planned. So like I said, we're kind of dipping into the vaults a little bit, but with the trailer for Aquaman finally coming out, we decided we'd probably do the first movie, because you're very anti. You and I are opposite on this, so this will be a good one in terms of where we don't agree. Let's see, what was the other? We had really great ideas the other day. Actor appreciation videos. Like, first two people that came to mind was Denzel and Keanu. We decided to do Keanu first, but it's going to be. I'm just going to start watching every Keanu movie that I can think of, because that's what we're going to do. Keanu Reeves is an icon.
I already know what my favorite Keanu Reeves movie is, and we'll get my top two Keanu Reeves movies are. So we'll get to that when we get to that episode. Yeah, we have that. We talked about that. I know we're going to do another MCU deep dive. We want to do a Superman versus Batman deep dive as well, because I know where we both stand on that. You're more of a Superman fan. I'm the Batman fan of the group. There's a lot of options of the old school stuff to do. And so we're going to deep dive into those more. Now the summer's over and we're back to not having a social life because it's, you know, everything's closing. All the pools are closing down here. So I won't be out looking at scantily clad women in bikinis. But, you know, and I'll be back in Washington to visit you, and we'll talk more. Shit, we might film one while I'm there. Who knows?
I'm in.
But I'm excited. I'm excited. And so for those of you out there watching, if you have ideas for us, what you guys want us to talk about, what you want us to deep dive into and talk about our nerddom, put it in the comments. Let us know. And shit, if you want to come on the episode and talk about something that you're nerdy about, if the episode about doing Keanu interests you, come join us. We'll totally nerd out about Keanu Reeves, and we'll talk about what our favorite movies are and how nerdy that can be. There's so much things to do. I'm so excited. And it was really good to see your face.
Fuck yeah, dude. Too long. Let's get one on the books here again very soon. You guys will see this, I don't know, in a week or two. By that time, we'll have another one filmed already. Like, that's the goal. Summer's over. Start staying inside. You know, kids back in school, so got time. We need to knock out some content and keep it steady. And then soon as the strike's over, it's on. Like, soon as the strike's over, I think news is just going to blow up because everybody's starting negotiating again, everything.
Well, there's so much that we want to talk about, things that have come out, you know, the Blue Beetle. I want to deep dive into Indiana Jones, and we can't do that yet either. And, you know, all these things that once the strike's over, we're going to deep dive into these things that have been happening. And so I'm really excited for it all.
Yes, sir.
And Oppenheimer, I want to deep dive into that too. And we'll talk about that later. But yeah, man, it was fun. I love talking TMNT, and I'm excited to do more about it. I will say this before we go, for anyone who's watching, when this airs, it'll be the last day of season 4 of Call of Duty. Did you see what was happening for season 5? Did you see what they announced? Spawn.
What?
Spawn. Bro. Spawn. And Keith David apparently is going to be voicing the character of Spawn for the skin. I'm so excited to see what happens. I'm so excited. It announced today. It's last night or today. I'm really excited to see that. So take a look at it. For those of you who are fans of Call of Duty, come check us out. Nacho Daddy. What is your gamer tag?
Superman Punch. Superman
Punches. Yeah.
Yep.
Come check us out. I'm on stream with my buddies. Yep, there it is. Yeah, bro. So excited for it. So excited. Come check us out on Twitch. Nacho Daddy. Awesome. On Twitch, Chris Drybones, Gas Station Jake, all those guys. You can find me as well on Twitter at Cousin Ryan 2021. And on this network, The Last American Heroes, you can look at my other episodes of Beyond the Neon Veil, where we talk about Las Vegas. My favorite episode still probably is going to be the first episode we did with this guy. Go check it out. And go check out the trivia show, Benny and Moose Save America. I've been hosting quite a few of them as well. It's been a great time. This past Thursday, we just did one with Wayne's World that I got to host. It was hilarious. I talked a lot of shit to our guests because it was just funnier and shit to do that. But we hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember to click subscribe, like it, follow our shit, or fuck off, because we just bring it to you to have fun. Josh, it's good to see you, dude. So much fun tonight.
Yes,
we'll have to catch up again soon. We'll do another episode. But for all of you out there, thanks again for joining us. For all nerd kind, I'm your host, Cousin Ryan, and my best host friend, my buddy Josh. We'll see you guys all next time. Have a good night.
Later, guys.